It is difficult for young people to find jobs around here. She was in England for the publication of her new book. He used to work at night and sleep during the day. The economic program for the country has been ignored. I have made an appointment to see the doctor this morning. He ordered some new books from America on a website. The manufacturer's name is on the bottom of the plate. There is a special exam designed for students with disabilities. There are opportunities for you to go abroad as part of your undergraduate studies. There was a lack of objectivity in the way the candidates were judged. He was at the clinic recovering from an operation on his arm.
It's rare to find an adult who actively still wonders what their parents think. But that isn't to say that we aren't wondering about our value in more general terms. It's just that we may, without noticing, have taken the question somewhere else, and very often to particularly harsh modern figures of authority, media, and social media. To this pitiless arena, the self-doubting person now directs all their fears of unworthiness and panic desire for reassurance. To a system set up to reward sadism and malice, they constantly raise their phones and implicitly ask, "Do I deserve to exist? Am I okay? Am I beautiful or respectful enough?" And because social media is built on the troubles of the individual soul, the verdict is never a reliable yes. One is never done with cycles of fear and reassurance seeking. Every time their spirits sink, which is often, the self-doubting sufferer picks up their phone and begs to know whether they have permission to go on. If this might be us, we should grow curious about and jealous of people who are free. They are so because someone long ago settled the question of what they were worth, and the answer has seemed solid ever since. Social media is a roar in the next valley, not a mob in their own mind. Learning from these calm souls won't just involve deleting a few apps. We will have to go further upstream, back to the baby self, whose alarmed inquiries we must quiet once and for all, with ample doses of soothing, and till now, absent kindness.
How many colors are there in a rainbow? 7 or 8? What do we call the device used to generate electricity? What are the thick forests in tropical parts of the world that have a lot of rain? How do we describe materials that are able to conduct electricity? What do we call an animal or plant that has parents of different species or varieties? What is opposite to herbivore?
Most buildings today use a lot of energy to keep the lights on, cool the air, heat water, and power personal devices. Even installing solar systems will not significantly counter the heavy energy load. There are, however, some buildings that strike a balance, or even tip the scales the other way. These are called zero-energy buildings. They manage this feat by being extremely energy efficient, saving 50 to 70% more energy than typical buildings. In these ultra-high performance buildings, the amount of energy used can be completely offset by renewable energy produced on or around the building. When conditions are not suitable for energy generation, the building will draw energy from the electrical grid to meet its needs. When conditions improve, the on-site renewable energy systems will cover the building's energy need and send excess energy back into the grid to make up the balance. Over the course of a year, the building gives back as much energy as it takes. When zero-energy concepts are applied to groups of buildings, the benefits are shared and multiplied within that zero-energy community.
Technological change has had a profound effect on the way music is made and how it sounds, as well as on the way we listen to it. New technologies, and I mean this in the broadest sense, not just electronic devices, can alter the sound of music and, in the case of electronic recording systems, affect the economics and distribution of music. For example, the innovation of the valve trumpet in the 19th century changed the sound of the orchestra. Now, everyone has easy access to a wide variety of music, but it is arguable whether this has increased our understanding of it. Before radio and recorded music, those who could afford it would have pianos or pianolas, mechanical pianos that played a role of sheet music, so the basic ability to read notes off a page was more widespread. However, these days, regardless of whether or not we are musical experts, there is no doubt that music enhances life, and with the internet, sites to download music from, file sharing and so on, we have access to more music than ever before, and a lot of it for free.
People rarely translate another person's unique way of saying things with any degree of accuracy. This is because when we learn the meaning of words, we pick up their broad meanings, but we've added subtle shades of difference, which we get from our own personal experiences. If you grew up in an aggressive household, the phrase, "I'm angry with you," had different associations than for a person from a family where people talked through problems. We're left having to work out meaning from our own experience. So, despite the fact that, say, Bob and Gina are both speaking English, Bob is really speaking Bob English, and Gina is turning that into Gina English, and the translation is never going to be perfect.
We miscommunicate more commonly than we communicate accurately. Often the words we have are at least somewhat inadequate to express how we feel. The first words we think of are often poor reflections of what we really mean. We might at times even want to take our words back for a second attempt. But once those words have left our mouths, our partners are already replying to whatever we have just said. Most conversations happen too fast to allow us to figure out what we really meant to say.
First, though, family members, politicians, historians, and civil rights advocates are paying tribute to Colin Powell, an American military and political leader who passed away Monday at age 84. Powell had an extraordinary resume dating all the way back to his work in the Reserve Officers Training Corps while he was in college. At that time, Powell attained the ROTC's highest rank, and he continued to advance his military career from there. Powell served in combat during the Vietnam War and became a 4-star general in the U.S. Army. During the presidency of Ronald Reagan, Powell became America's first black national security advisor. Under President George H.W. Bush, Powell became the first African-American chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, the country's highest-ranking military officer.
Long-term exposure to noise can lead to loss of hearing. The relative loudness of sounds is measured in decibels. Just to give you an idea of what this means, the sound of a whisper is 30 decibels, while a normal conversation is 60 decibels. The noise a vacuum cleaner makes is around 85 decibels. The danger zone, the risk of injury, begins at around 90. Continual exposure to sounds above 90 decibels can damage your hearing. Loud noises, especially when they come at you every day, all this noise can damage the delicate hair cells in your inner ear. Lots of everyday noises are bad for us in the long run. For example, a car horn sounds at around 100 decibels. A rock band at close range is 125 decibels. A jet engine at close range is one of the worst culprits at an ear-busting 140 decibels. The first thing to go is your high-frequency hearing, where you detect the consonant sounds in words. That's why a person with hearing loss can hear voices, but has trouble understanding what's being said.
Although the original American Indian cultures were highly diverse, they were similar in many of their traditions. Religious beliefs and rituals permeated every aspect of Indian life. Southwest tribes such as the Hopi and the Apaches had a rich and elaborate year-round sequence of ceremonials including songs, dances, and poetry. The Hopi performed dances to bring rain. The Apaches engaged in special dances and ceremonies to gain the support of the spirits before undertaking raids or going into war. The Plains tribes often sought contact with the spirits by going on a vision quest.
Psychology is a relatively new science. Like other sciences, psychology must be able to state laws. A law is a way of organizing knowledge about something so that we can make predictions. When enough knowledge is gained about a subject, a scientist can state precisely what will happen under certain conditions. We experimental psychologists are interested in developing laws about human behavior, so we'll be able to understand and predict what people do and why they do it. Of course, to develop laws about human behavior, we must assume there's some regularity to it. We can't be psychologists without making the assumption that behavior follows.
Imagine that you're in charge of a company and hiring for a new position. Here are the candidates. Without thinking about it too much, which one would you choose? My guess is that you went for one of those in the middle and avoided the people on the ends. Why? Because research shows that we tend to unconsciously think those towards the middle of the group are more important. Some of the work has examined the TV quiz show The Weakest Link, in which contestants stand in a semicircle and vote one another off. Those standing towards the middle of the semicircle won the game on average 45% of the time, whilst those standing on one of the ends won just 10% of the time. So if you want to make a good impression during a meeting, make certain you sit
Music, film, and video game makers face a new online digital world, and some are testing a revolutionary pricing system, pay what you want. But a new study finds that when consumers can name their own price, many opt out of buying at all. The study is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. For the research, tour boat passengers posed for photos. Each boat ride announced a price of $15 per picture, but they then charged either $15, $5, or the option to pay what you want. As expected, the fewest tourists purchased photos when they had to pay full price, but more customers bought photos when they cost $5 than when prices were pay what you want, which could have saved passengers even more. The researchers suggest that choosing to pay less than an announced, lower than expected price made people feel cheap. With choices then limited to spending more money or feeling like a tightwad, potential customers simply opted out of the purchase. So on sea or land, a low set price may catch the most fish.
Imagine climbing Diamond Mountains or hiking around the graphite shores of a lake of tar. Sound a little sci-fi? Well, a new discovery suggests planets like that might be out there. Planets littered with carbon minerals instead of the oxygen-rich silicates like quartz that cover the Earth. Because astronomers have found the first carbon-rich exoplanet with more carbon than oxygen in its atmosphere, instead of the 1:2 carbon to oxygen ratio found in our solar system. The exoplanet, called WASP-12b, is a gas giant like Jupiter. By taking the spectrum of heat radiating from the planet, the researchers found that the planet's atmosphere was loaded with carbon, in the form of carbon monoxide and methane. The study appears in the journal Nature. The findings suggest one commonly accepted model of planetary formation, where icy chunks glom into a core, wouldn't work here. Instead, the core may have formed from carbon-rich fragments, like tar. But more than that, this unusual planet is more proof of the diversity of the universe, and it makes those dreams of diamond planets a tiny bit more plausible.
To a female orb web spider, a suitable male can look like a mate and a meal. For these spiders, the dating game has turned into a deadly dance of evolutionary one-upsmanship. The female spider can choose when to cut off intimate relations by eating her partner or kicking him out. This dynamic has led males to an unlikely strategy to make sure they have some say in the matter: self-castration. Males are able to leave part or all of their organ inside of a female, which decreases the odds the female will be able to mate again. But new research shows that when a male leaves his whole kit and caboodle behind, his likelihood of fathering the next batch of eggs is much higher. Why? His parting gift keeps on giving, even after he is gone. This remote copulation technique actually boosts the amount and speed of sperm transferred to the female. The behavior is described in the journal Biology Letters. So, for these unlucky fellas, it is better to have loved and lost.
You need to work harder to pass the final test. The visitors were requested to assemble in the lobby. The Advanced Mathematics Lab will be open again next semester.
A growing number of people are beginning to follow a vegetarian diet.